about Cheryl Swoops regarding Caitlyn Clark. Want to play what he had to say for you now, and then want to continue on the show. Take a listen to Stephen A. Smith here.
We know what she did at the WNBA All-Star game. They averaged like 3.4 million viewers on ABC. That All-Star week. I mean, come on now. This is Caitlyn Clark. This is the Caitlyn Clark effect. And so it's time for everybody to stand down. It's time for everybody to admit, Stephen A., you were right. You were right, Stephen A. Caitlyn Clark should have been on Team USA. Should have been on Team USA. And we also write about the fact that there's been some haterade being thrown in her direction. Okay? Because there's no excuse to have resentment towards her. And see, we don't want to address the big elephant in the room, but we ain't going to run from it today because Cheryl Swoops made news. Now, she made news last week when she sat up there and was applauding Indiana Fever players, but then forgot to mention Caitlyn Clark. She jumped all in my ass because I sat up there and said, hey, how you going to ignore Caitlyn Clark? You know what she brings to the table. How you just going to ignore her? That's not an accident. Cheryl Swoops is a champion. A champion. Look at her tweet and what she put up about me. You talk about whomever and whatever you want to on your podcast, correct? So why can't I? Also, did you listen to the entire episode? Nope. I have a personal relationship with these players, and they deserve recognition as well. That ain't the point, Cheryl Swoops. Yes, I did listen to your entire podcast. You didn't mention Caitlyn Clark. So I was right, number one. Number two, your personal relationship, what that got to do with your coverage? Ain't nobody said don't mention them. Ain't nobody said don't applaud them. Nobody told you to ignore them. What we're saying is if you're going to give the Indiana Fever all the credit in the world, how you going to mention the Indiana Fever without Caitlyn Clark's name even coming up? So then after that, Cheryl Swoops engages in levels of immaturity. There's no way to slice it. I'm not going to insult this champion, this great basketball mind, this phenomenally accomplished Hall of Famer. I'm not going to insult her. All I'm going to say is it was pretty damn immature to come back at me like that. Called me an effing coward because I called you out for not doing your job. So you on a podcast that means you don't have to do your job? I mean, the bottom line is this. She engaged in a level of immaturity. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, to just bite at me like that. Oh, why? Because what did I say? What did I say? You want to know what I said? Take a look at what I said last week about Cheryl Swoops. Respectfully, Cheryl Swoops, you have any idea how that makes you look? You have any idea how that serves to stain any kind of critique of Caitlyn Clark, because that gives fodder to those who believe she's being hated on and ostracized to some degree. Do you realize that, Cheryl Swoops, you're insane to do that? Let me tell you why you're insane to do that. Because Cheryl Swoops, you're one of the greatest players ever in the history of basketball. That's why. See, you won a championship in college at Texas Tech. You won 3 Olympic gold medals. You won 4 WNBA championships. You know basketball. You know basketball better than me. You know basketball than any of the pundits. You know basketball better than most of the men that play basketball. There is no way in hell you just accidentally left Caitlyn Clark's name out of that soliloquy that you dropped about the Indiana Fever. Stop it. You know that. Stop it. I mean, listen, the bottom line is this. There's a whole bunch of reasons that I'm quite sure Cheryl Swoops can come up with. Who can imagine that she's got stuff on her mind? Lord knows what she's got on her mind and what she wants to express. I get all of that. People can speculate until the cows come home about what that is. But one thing that's undeniable is that she seems to get offended with her objectivity being questioned, her professional objectivity. The problem is she's the one that brought her professional objectivity into focus by her own behavior. What possible excuse could you have talking about the Indiana Fever and nary a mention of Caitlyn Clark? How is that possible? How's that possible? You know what Indiana was before she arrived. You know what the attendance was before she arrived. You know what merchandise sales was before she arrived. You know what attendance was before she arrived. You know what the ratings were before she arrived. How could you not mention her? It makes no sense. So I can understand why Cheryl Swoops would have an attitude with people who would question her professional objectivity. But I also understand why people would look at her like she's lost her ever-loving mind. because you're literally putting the lack of professional objectivity on display for audiences to see, and then you're looking at us acting like what's wrong. It's like you spitting in people's face telling them it's raining.
So let me get into what this article had to say. It says the hype around Caitlyn Clark is so big that her first playoff game was a hot ticket, with the lowest price on platform TickPick showing $133. To put it into context, this would be more than the cheapest ticket at all 4 WNBA final games from last season, which came out to be about $131 total. Clark has been instrumental in the rising popularity of the WNBA, coming off of 2 incredible sports-defining NCAA tournaments in 2023 and 24, not to mention her breaking the NCAA all-time scoring record. Clark entered the WNBA draft pool and was the first overall pick in this year's draft, selected by the Indiana Fever. She immediately settled into a groove in the league, establishing herself amongst the best players in the entire league, despite being a rookie. She had an incredible season and attracted a lot of eyeballs to the league, helping the WNBA to grow to heights unforeseen in the past. A big draw for the WNBA this season was the continued rivalry between Caitlyn Clark and Angel Reese. Reese and Clark's rivalry began at the 2023 NCAA tournament when Reese and LSU defeated Clark and Iowa State, along with Reese mocking Clark by doing "you can't see me" gesture. Clark made her gesture during the tournament. And now both players are in WNBA. The rivalry has become more intense. Every game between Reese's Chicago Sky and Clark's Indiana Fever became appointment viewing, drawing some of the largest gates and television viewership figures in the history of the WNBA. In fact, the final showdown between Clark and Reese became the most expensive WNBA game of all time, as the average ticket price was over $300, unheard of in the WNBA in years prior. And then the article then goes on to talk about how she won the Rookie of the Year. Now you see why Stephen A. Smith was promoting her as much as he was. For those of us here who are not regular WNBA viewers, we're like, this is a no-brainer. Like, what's all the hoopla about? I've even seen segments on Gil's Arena with former NBA players basically calling out the women of the WNBA like, yo, what are y'all doing? Like, yo, what are y'all doing? This girl is the golden goose, and y'all are finding a way to screw it up.